again. Had a little bit of issue there with the processing. For some reason or another, we were over processing yet again with this software. Might have to look for a replacement for this software, as it tends to, as you leave it open for longer periods of time, it tends to just start adding extra stuff every time that you transfer to a different camera angle or something like that. It really shouldn't do that. I don't know why it keeps doing that, but just to stay safe, we're going to try to just keep it live on this live feed here for the circle track. And as you can see, we also had a full speed come apart for the race software simultaneously, as it had a runtime error that took place. So when it rains, it pours, I suppose. But we took a picture of the first heat laps. So I'll take a quick look at that and let you guys know that after the first heat, Tom Payton had 50 laps, Bruce Bullington 52, 39 Cameron D, Glenn Burden with 55, Randy Kirtley with 49, and Nathaniel Burden with 47. So that's after our first heat. So at the end of it, we'll add those numbers in with the 7 heat numbers that are left over. And then once we get all 8 heats tied up, we'll get us a total, and we'll see who actually is the winner of this race. My mind's all over the place currently right now, just simply because when that stuff happens, it is a little bit annoying, to say the least. We see Paul Woosley there hurrying up, trying to get that car back on for Bruce Bullington. As they come out real quick, Bruce kind of giving them a little bit of a love nudge there in the high bank corner of Glenn Burden's car there on white. Just recently resprayed this track. We use a mixture of naphtha and medium glue now. We used to use light glue, but the medium glue has definitely helped keep the back ends of these cars pretty good and tight. As we get the end of that round robin heat, quite frankly, just super nervous to even swap over. But if you can see in the top left of your screen, Randy Kirtley now currently in the lead with 65 laps. Nathaniel 55, Glenn Burden 52, Bruce Bullington 49, Tom Payton 49, and Cameron D 48. So Tom, fresh out, new in this series, already doing better than most when they start. As we see Tom Payton turning 50 laps in the previous heat for his first lane. Hopefully the stream holds up. Thank you for the like. Everything's showing pretty well right now. Right now we have 52% of the CPU processor going, 27% of the GPU. It seems like this software here doesn't really care to use the GPU as much as it should. I have better luck with OBS for sure when it comes to GPU processing. But nonetheless, it fluctuates every once in a while. It gets up there in the 50s or 60s. It just depends on if there's any kind of moving video whatsoever to be taking place. One thing I've noticed is you can see my wife there in the background. It does not like processing people in the background for some reason with this Logitech camera. So the more movement that takes place in the background, yeah, you probably do cause it to hiccup. This software just does not like that. But anyways, we'll just have to make do with what we can, as we see Bruce Bullington also making do, getting his car ready there in red lane. Of course, Bruce, probably the guy you need to be watching for whether or not there's going to be a win to be made here tonight. Bruce will definitely be in the top 3 for sure, as he has got these GRCs figured out. I know Bruce just started racing slot cars here at Lanes Raceway, but he's already veteran status when it comes to being able to keep these cars running efficiently. One of the most freed up, best looking cars went on a tech block before the race for sure, as everything in his car is very even, polished, just super smooth in the front. Uh, just the type of car that I would want to race if I was racing in the same series for sure. Glenn Burden there also a quick front runner, finished very high in the series that we just recently had. Starting a new series, if interested, make sure give us a call, sign up online, or you can pay here and sign up as we're getting ready to start into a new series, and it is these GRCs. This is also our beginner class for sure. As you can see, the cars are not extremely fast like our NASCARs, somewhat that you can follow them. We see there on the black lane, Randy Kirtley, his car really just stepping it up out there as he's got that good rhythm going down, especially with the new sprayed track. Seems like everything's fallen into place for him here recently when it comes to the GRCs. Him and Bruce battling back and forth for sure. One thing I have noticed just in the past 3 races is we're getting a whole lot more wrecks happening and taking place in the high banks than usual. It seems like that's the new hot spot for people to take wrecks, whereas previously Dead Man's Corner took up most of the wrecks. But we still see quite a few wrecks down in Dead Man's Corner, but more and more wrecks are starting to take place in the high banks. As this track has been maneuvered and finagled around several times since we've opened it to try to get that best amount of cars hanging on and top speed to match. We've almost got the whole track itself banked. I know Dead Man's Corner looks like a flat corner from your eyes on the screen, but I'll assure you there is bank in that corner down there. It's just not as much as the high banks here right next to you on the screens. We get both Bruce Bullington and Glenn Burden's car coming into each other with some pretty harsh contact there by Bruce Bullington's car. He's taking a quick look at his car to make sure it's not bent. If you want to stay on top, you definitely got to keep the car straight. You definitely don't want it to be bent for sure, because if it bends to one side or the other, like I said, this track is almost banked all the way around. You'd be dragging that tire, because these guys really like to get those tires just, I mean, a hair, if you can see that little gap there, just a hair off of the track. The front tires actually do not touch, for those that don't know. It's not like RC where all 4 tires are touching. You don't want your tires touching in this case, in this 4.5-inch class. That's just more friction. Not to mention, if the car is bent and you go into a banked corner, it can actually push you out of the slot. So a lot of the guys, what they'll do is they'll take nylon washers and stuff like that and stick it up underneath the guide flag just to get those tires up off the ground just a hair, so that for the straight stretch they're freed up. Thank you for that light. Appreciate it. That's another thing. You don't know how much it means just to get those likes. That actually pushes us up into an algorithm, gets us out further out, I guess, in the United States and stuff like that. So the more likes that we get, the more people that follow the channel, the more people that comment, all these things go to help Lanes Raceway get a further reach out there in the community. And that's what we're aiming for, as if we can get a really good following here, we want to really bring those proceeds to our racers for sure. Not just the proceeds, but to get it out there to people that have never even seen a slot car. For the most part, the younger generation now has never even seen one of these. They've seen RC cars and stuff like this, but slot cars is just like RCs, a little bit cheaper to get involved in. But I will say this, you got to have about as much skill to run these as you do an RC. It's just a different mindset. Running RC, of course, you got to figure out the turning and stuff like that. Not so much precision as into the throttle control, as throttle control in slot cars is very, very important. To say in a professional standpoint, RC cars in a professional standpoint, when people actually got the corners down and stuff, then they focus more in on the throttle control. Then I would say it's probably a little bit more difficult for RC than it is for slot cars. I see Paul Woosley making me crack up there as he peeked his head through the door. But most times when you go to RC racing and stuff, you don't really have to have that perfect line every lap. On this though, if you're going to be competitive in slot car racing, you have to have that rhythm down. That's when you hear me talk about rhythm, it is that perfect amount of letting off the trigger and getting back on it, letting off the trigger and getting back on it. That's how quick you got to be in every single one of these lanes. Like drive it as hard as you can all the way to the point till you cannot drive it hard anymore. Let off and get back in it. Let off and get back in it so that you get that back end biting and to take you around the corner. The whole key is to keep your car as straight as possible in slot car racing. But like I said, the difference of this versus RC is that in RC, sometimes you can hit the ramp wrong if you're, let's say, running like Traxxas trucks. You can hit the ramp wrong, but still make it up. You don't have to take that same corner every single time. I know we've all seen videos online of like professionals running RC like overseas in Japan, sometimes even here in the United States, where they're hitting those lines just perfect. But those are really your top 1% runners. I mean, I've seen people run RC before. It's not really that beautiful for the most part. But you see those professionals, they're all in a line. They're taking those turds just as perfect as can be. Very, very similar to kind of how slot cars take their turns perfectly. And that's simply because, you know, the track's cut out. So they're going to take it the same way. You got to be able to pick up that pace in other ways other than the line itself. Whereas RC, you can choose your own line. Like I said, a lot of similarities, but several differences too when it comes to the hobby. Like I said, these guys mostly focus on the build itself. It's very, very important to focus on your build quite a lot more because you're trying to get every single ounce of what you can get out of it. I'm not saying that people don't do that in RC, but I'm saying the price difference between someone that is nitpicking, let's say, I guess that's a good word for it, nitpicking at the RC versus nitpicking at GRC, or I'm sorry, RC cars. RC would be substantially higher in price for getting those premium parts versus what it is for slot car racing. So even if you were thinking about getting into RC racing, slot cars could be definitely a very beginning for those that would be interested in getting in that. So you get that trigger control down now early on in slot car racing. Maybe you could step up into that RC depending on how serious you wanted to take things. But like I said, even if you never did, slot car racing is just a good community of guys, and it's also just quite fun just to come out here and hang out with the guys and push the limits. It's just like anything else. You practice basketball day in and day out, you get better at basketball. Well, slot car racing is the same way. The more laps you turn, the better you're going to be at slot car racing. So we take a quick look at some of the differences in these cars. Take a quick gander there at the black lane. I know the car just popped off there at black lane. You see my wife getting them put back on, but see the slop that's in the back of that car there, causing it to swish back and forth. This could be attributed to a couple things. One of the things is the body's a little bit longer than some of the other bodies that are out here. But one of the probably bigger aspects or reasons in why that the car is slopping back and forth is just sheer not cleaning of the tires, or maybe the tires are old and maybe somewhat starting to pull off a little bit. A way that you can fix that back-to-back slide, there's a couple ways that you can do it. You can fix it in the controller first and foremost. If you have a sensitivity setting on your controller, what you want to do is you want to dial that sensitivity down until that back end kind of gets straight for you, coming out of the end of that flat corner there at Dead Man's Corner, because that's what's actually causing that sway, is just too much aggression coming out of that corner. If you do set the sensitivity down and you see no effect, it's still slopping back and forth, then the next best thing is, in between heats, make sure you run some good lighter fluid, combing fluid through your tires. Get those cleaned out with a nice rag, being somewhat aggressive to the tire to try to pull as much dirt as possible out, and then reseat some of that glue back into the tire. Now, once you do that, that'll cause that glue to stick a little bit better. But like I said, this track is just freshly wetted earlier today with glue, so most likely it isn't a glue issue. Could be dirty tire issue. So clean the tires and make sure that you're constantly maintaining those. Another thing could just be simply maybe the tires in the front are somewhat dragging a little bit coming out of that corner. That could be fixed by putting a washer under the guide flag to lift it up a little bit. If not that, it just, like I said, the sheer aggression of the trigger finger not get accelerating while the car's not straight. So when you're coming around that corner, if it's hung out and you're getting back into the accelerator, it's more apt to swap back and forth in the back. So you just, like I said, more laps, the more consistent you'll be coming out of that corner. Turn more laps on these tracks. Oval is definitely the easiest of them. Like I said, just turn more of those laps. The more laps you turn, the straighter you'll be coming out of that section. The smoother, I guess, will be a better way instead of straighter, but the smoother you'll be coming out of that corner. You want to be smooth for sure. If you're not smooth, you're just losing time. That slop back and forth that you see on the car is lost time. Of course, anybody needs help here at Lanes Raceway, they're wondering why that happens. There's another way that you can settle that down, and this is more of a definitive way to settle it down. You can simply just put weight in the rear of the car to make it settle down, or put it in about the middle of the car to help it plant a little bit better. It's really just how dependent on how radical it does swap back and forth. Well, we could take a look at another car here. We take a look at that yellow car of Randy Kirtley, and we can see him not as aggressive coming out of Dead Man's Corner, and his car's not swapping back and forth. And this is simply, he's probably got his controller dialed in for this specific lane, and I chose him for a reason, as he's probably has the most skill out of everyone here when it comes to slot car racing. But you can see laps turned does matter, not to mention the setup of the car. Freed up, straight line, gentle into the accelerator, just like you would in a real car. Randy Kirtley still currently leading with 183 laps total right now. Bruce Bullington right there behind him with 168. Everybody probably asking the question, why is Bruce not closer to Randy, as he's usually within a lap or two of Randy? Well, that's pretty simple. For one, Bruce is running his high lanes right now. Randy Kirtley's running his low lanes. And it could be that Bruce is testing out a new gear ratio in the rear end to get ready for the upcoming series. As this is somewhat of a mixed series here going on tonight, with the guys basically just preparing for that series that's coming up. And whether or not we get that series up and rolling is still yet to be decided. But we're going to need some more people to join up. And, of course, we appreciate everybody that does. And we like to definitely celebrate our racers. My wife kind of peeking in through the window there. You can see her in the top left of your screen there on the oval screen by the American flag. Straight staring me down. Tom Payton, though, I'm staring him down there in the top right of my screen, as he's new to this, but faring fairly well for a car fresh out of the box. Gear ratios in this definitely matter somewhat, but can you take a car out of the box and win with it? Yes, you can. My brother, a couple months back, recently showed this. He pulled one fresh out of the box, ran the whole race, and in the final heat ended up stripping a gear out. But if he didn't strip that gear out, he would have won the race. I think he lost it by 2 laps. So, yes, you can pull them, and the gear ratios matter. But like I said, what mostly matters, consistently speaking, over and over and over again, is just, do you have confidence of the track? Are you able to keep it in that slot? Are you able to get around that corner smoothly? If you can do these things, yeah, you can take one right out of the box. I don't care if it ain't got lead in one side, if it ain't structured up, if it ain't got these special tires from whoever knows where. You can take one out of the box and you can win with it. Is it easier if you set it to the way that you drive? Well, of course, and that's the magic of slot car racing. Uh, Chelsea, Chelsea Alicia Gaddis says hello and Happy New Year. She said hello. So we head back green racing area. We can see these other cars here, every one of them just right there neck and neck with each other. Everybody that has tuned in before has seen these races before and know that these cars are very, very similar. Where that you can tell the difference between gear ratio is right before they have to brake there on Dead Man's Corner, and then all the way through Dead Man's Corner. So someone that is running a long gear or a short gear ratio, I guess you would say like a point or 2 point something or whatever, that would be for your top end. You'll see them reeling the people that come out of the corners quickly. You'll see them reeling them in right before they have to brake. But then other people that run the short gears or the higher gear ratios, which in term is the short ratio there of a 3 point something, you get the higher RPMs. So you're getting through Dead Man's Corner a whole lot snappier, a whole lot quicker. This track alone, being that it's a medium tri-oval track, I have recently found that it's almost a median between the two that works the best. So not having full-fledged acceleration and not having full-fledged top end, somewhere in the middle. And the funny thing is, this is where it's really funny. The cars come that way. So I guess you just got to know your own trigger finger. We see Alicia Gaddis saying, "Go Bruce." Bruce, Alicia says, "Go Bruce." Bruce waving to his many fans, as Bruce has many fans in the GRC for sure. We're starting to actually see Bruce now being able to take some of the lower lanes here, and we can also take a look at Bruce's car and look how smooth his car is in transition. We see Bruce there with a longer gear ratio. I can just tell by looking at it. Narrowly missing a wreck there by what seems to be Glenn Burton's vehicle. We see Paul Woosley there snagging him up, getting him back on there. But we can tell the difference also just in when the people have to let off their trigger. So you know when a car is under acceleration, it's constantly moving faster forward. But you can tell when they're letting off too. If you focus in really close, we'll see that Bruce is letting off somewhere between Glenn Burton and Cameron is about where he's letting off. So he's letting off now. He's letting off now. And he has to let off back further like that simply because he's on purple for one. But another reason he's letting off that far back is because of his gear ratio set a little bit lower than everybody else, is giving him that top speed advantage. And that's why he's not able to come out of Dead Man's Corner as quick as other people that have a higher or lower end or accelerating gear ratio, like a 3 or a 3 point something. Well, we see the top speed there just taking Cameron there on the underside there for sure is the top speed of his car. But like I said, could his car do that just simply by gear ratio? In the long run, I suppose it possibly could. But the reason that Bruce's car is running as smooth as it is, like when you hear Bruce's car come by, you don't hear any noise, anything like that, any kind of hardware or nothing like that on his gear ratio. You just hear a smooth car going by. You pretty much hear the wind going by. And the reason why is because Bruce takes his car and he works on it in his garage. He gets it freed up. And I've seen his front wheels. He tries to stay out of accidents, as you've seen there whenever Glenn's car was coming down to the bottom of the track and he let off. He let off because he knew that car could possibly be in his way. He wanted to make sure it was at the bottom of the track before he went on. knowing that he's on purple lane, and that's where cars rest there in the high banks. But I've seen his car, and I've seen other people's car, Randy's car included, where that they take the time, they sorter those bushings in to where they're perpendicular, both horizontally and vertically for the given tire that they use.
Is Lisa still watching?
I don't know if she is or not.
Where's your camera? Oh.
My wife sending lots of love out to the Georgia sisters,
Who's my
to well, to Chelsea's Georgia sisters, Alicia and Lulu. So we see Cameron there with his car there. Like I said, somewhat of a little bit of slot back and forth. We see Bruce there coming in to help him out there, putting a little bit of what looked to be braid juice there on his braids. That definitely does help too, connectability for getting a good solid electrical connection, braid and brushes. And that's definitely what you got to have the power put down. You definitely have to have a good connection. You don't want your car going around, slopping around, not getting a good connection. It just sparks out, and you lose that power. Um, but yeah, the guys come in here. If they spend some time on the track, uh, rent a little bit of track time here at the track, I'll go out there and I'll do my best to get them straightened up the best that I can while I'm here, unless I have a whole pile up of stuff that I'm doing for other racers that, basically contract me as clients to, make them a body, or build them a car, or whatever it may be. But if I don't have backup work, I love going out there, firing up some of the previous streams, getting down on a low lane, getting up on a high lane, and having the guys run as hard as they can on a low and high lane, and trying different things to make their cars faster, or at least pull the same kind of median time that the fastest racer did in the previous week. And if we can get that car freed up and we can get that car to that situation, they're race ready. They're ready to come to this race, and they should be able to win it if they don't get involved in a bunch of accidents and they keep their rhythm with the rest of the pack. Now, it's different when you're out there in the pack and there's a lot of people racing next to you. Your nerves get unbalanced. It's just like any kind of competition that you do. But like I said, turn more laps with these people, get in there, race more with these people, and it's not as daunting as it is the first few times when the butterflies are flying. So we go back racing here. We see Bruce just right out of the gate there on black, really flying. His back end staying crisp and under control coming out of dead man corner. A little bit loose coming through the twitch of the track there, or the crook of the track as we call it. That's what you want to be. You want to be a little bit loose there, because loose is fast in the end of it all, but keeping that under control, he's able to keep that top speed poured all the way until he has to brake about where Tom Payton is located there next to Natty Ice, also known as Nathaniel Burden. Everybody else running right there in a cluster to each other, as they're all somewhat on the middle lanes. We see Randy Kirtley in a higher lane there, pretty much staying wide open almost through the whole part of the track. This comes to good prep of the tires, keeping everything oiled up and smooth. That's another big thing. You want to be free, you got to keep the oil in it. Every one of those axles are producing wear, they're catching. You've got to keep them freed up and oiled. That keeps the noise down. That noise, just think of noise like this. Noise is friction. If you got a car that's not making a lot of noise, that means your car's not under a bind. That means it's not under friction. If you do hear noise, a lot of times just standard noise between a brass pinion and a crown gear. This can be alleviated by, swapping out a pinion to a hardened steel pinion, or swapping out from your crown gear from using a hard Cox crown gear to something like a Parma Pink or something like that. Those two in tangent together can really make the car sound a lot smoother. But nonetheless, everybody running relatively right there with each other. The accelerators getting out of the corners quicker, but getting chased down by the top end gears there towards the end. So it's a give and take thing, a back and forth, as we see Randy Kirtley and Bruce Bullington now tightening up the reins a little bit here that Bruce is able to turn his lower lanes. Just one lap off the pace from Randy Kirtley there. But as we can see the differences there in the ratios, we can see that Randy Kirtley, middle lanes and high lanes, not doing quite as well as Bruce is. Bruce kind of suffered early on the red lane there as it was the beginning of the race. Somewhat hard to run those faster laps. But we can see on his blue lane and his green lane there running approximately one lap greater, 2 laps, and on green actually better than Randy's 58 laps turned on orange. So Randy's gear ratio setup is set definitely for the low end to try to get those laps turned really, really on the lower side of the track, which is a good kind of setup, especially for the Pro Series that's about to start in these truck series. But the same thing is, if you can confidently turn more laps in the middle lanes, there's a whole lot more middle lanes than there is lower lanes. The lower lanes, you're looking at purple and black, to be honest. Yellow is really somewhat considered a middle lane, as yellow, blue, orange, and green are your middle lanes. And then, of course, your higher lanes would be red and white. So there's 3 types of ratios that you could set up. You could set up high. A real low gear ratio will get you a lot of laps on red and white. So if you're fast on red and white and you got your balance set for that in the Pro Series, you can turn more red and white laps than you can other people. But I think the consensus is that somewhere in the middle is where you want to set your ratio. As one tooth is the difference between running exceptional laps on black and purple, and one tooth is the difference between setting laps sensational on yellow, blue, orange, and green. And I believe that's what you're seeing between Bruce and Randy Kirtley here currently, is that Randy Kirtley's got his stuff set to turn laps exceptional on purple and black, and we have Bruce having his gear ratio that he's tried today set to turn those laps exceptional on yellow, blue, orange, and green. As we can see that Randy has suffered a little bit, lap or 2 on each one of those lanes. Five seconds before we go green, it looks like everybody's hooked up. My wife's headed back out there. She was kind of staring at me a few minutes ago. She was coming in here. Kind of makes me nervous sometimes when people are looking at me. I almost think they want something. Sometimes they just like to look at me, I guess. I'm a funny looking guy. We head back green racing. Everybody kind of scattered out right out of the gate here. We take a look here at Glenn. This is Glenn's favorite place, is on black. And we can see that Glenn's car just running smooth and straight as an arrow on black. No swap coming into the crook of the track. I mean, that car is just set down there on black lane. Alicia Gaddis says, "Let's go, Bruce. Lucy. It's my dad and your dad. The Jay and Gabriel competition." Okay, let me reread that because I read that like it was my first time reading. Let's go, Brucey Lucy. It's my dad and your dad, the Jay and Gabriel competition. I would say, yeah. I mean, when it comes to GRC currently right now in this meta, as the kids call it, they are definitely on their top of the game. Randy and Bruce back and forth every week. Bruce always trying something new. Randy just basically staying in his tried and true methods that he's learned over the years. But if you didn't see that, like I seen it just then, as I'm watching this race too, how just freed up Bruce's car is as it rolled through that high banks corner like it was still under power. These are the type of tricks and stuff these guys keep to themselves, and they ought to, especially if they're racing in the Pro Series. Now, I will say they all give those hints one to another, and especially to newcomers into it, trying to hint and let these guys know this is the path you need to follow to get to this point. And that's always a good thing. And in circle track racing, in the orange track racing, all of our 8-lane heaters for sure always like to help each other get to that point, because at the end of the day, both Bruce and Randy, they love the competition. And there's one thing I can't stand is when somebody is good and they they sandbag, I guess you would say. They they put on a show and let the other people beat them every once in a while. That's not good for kids. That's not good for anybody. If people are coming to a race, they need to be racing with everything they got. And if they are the best, it's just like NASCAR. Back when I was a kid, you turn it on, and Dale Earnhardt was winning every single race, and people hated his guts. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, I tell all my guys, everybody that's racing is a cheater. That's just, if you're on top, you're a cheater. But you need to just race, and you need to get those wins when you can get them, because the tide's coming when these young kids are coming up, and they're going to figure something out that you don't know. And when these kids figure it out and they start taking these old timers out, they're not on top anymore. So you got to get those wins when you can, and that strives that competition. Alicia guy says, haha, comments do get broke up, and Glenn is getting it in that lane. Preaching to converted. I agreed on him and give it all. Yeah, and I mean, Bruce come in here, like I said, never touched, what he told me, never touched a slot car before in his life, and he's running with one of the best I've seen, Randy Kirtley. And, Dad, sometimes he won't run races. If there's enough people, he won't run them, because, he doesn't enjoy getting out there and running with people that are a little bit lower than him. He wants those people to find their way. But at the same time, if he is running, he's not going to make it easy on people. He never made it easy for me and my brother growing up. And that's why whenever we race Dad, we make him sweat. We make him sweat because we figured stuff out that he's not willing to do. And, he knows stuff that we don't know. And there's just a few things that you got to keep secret to yourself. And I call it cheating. But in actual reality, it's not cheating. It's just you're within the rules and you're kind of bending them a little bit. But at the same time, it passes the tech tool. And every one of us are doing it. I know there's guys out there that'll take a buffing wheel and polish their chassis. Now they'll say, well, does that really matter? Well, I don't know. But I mean, if it was a real car and it was that big and it was, true to scale, 1-to-1, well, of course it would be less friction in the air, But anything within the rules, do the best that you can do. As we see Randy getting dethroned from his position currently, now he's in second place, as Bruce has taken the reins from Randy this week. Last week it was Randy with the reins. This week it's Bruce. Who's going to put in the most effort is the real question. Alicia Guy says, I respect your dad so much, and sounds like my dad when I was growing up. Well, I can assure you, these two guys, I'm cutting out here again. We're at 70% again. Okay, there we go. I can assure you that these two guys, Alicia, are definitely cut from the same cob. They love tinkering. They love getting their stuff just perfect, pristine before a race. And they both do get upset. I've seen them both upset. If the randomness of a circle track boils down to this: how are people racing when you're in red lane? How are people racing when you're in black lane? And that's usually what it boils down to. If you wreck 2 or 3 times with these guys, you're not going to win. These guys are keeping their cars on. Consistently speaking, they are running the best times out of people, as you could see previously. This is something you need to step your game up. How can I keep my car on? Well, first off is don't try to push it to the end of the wind. You just got to just keep what you can race with what your mind can keep track of at that current time. You got to keep it at your own pace. And then as you keep it at that pace, you're like, well, hey, I can push this a little bit further in this corner. I'm going to go ahead and try to push it a little bit quicker in that corner, and you say, well, hey, I hung that time. Let's try to do that same thing the next lap. And then you realize, hey, my comfort zone is moved now. Now I'm able to drive it deeper. And you just keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing that to the point that your car will literally not allow you to do it anymore. And then it's when you get to that point when your car will not allow you to do it anymore is where the rhythm's at. And both of these guys are there on that rhythm. Now, when you get to the rhythm, then it's just nerve. It's like, can you keep your nerve? Can you keep your sanity in that rhythm? Because I'm telling you, it is a thin red line. You are on the wire when you're at that point. And like I said, it's this. It's this when you're on that line. Can you do that over and over and over again for 80, 90 laps? If you can, you're going to win. If you can't, you're going to end up in a wreck. Most likely you end up in wrecks because you're so focused into getting it to that point that you're only focused on your own car. You kind of get in what's called the zone, as people call it. You get into that rhythm in that zone, and you end up running into people that are wrecked in front of you because you got that rhythm so much and you got yourself into a habit holding on to that perfect lap. And Randy and Bruce both. It feels so weird calling my dad Randy, so I'm just going to call him Dad. No offense to anybody, but my dad and Bruce, look, there they are, both of them. They're pushing the limits with each other. They're there neck and neck, and this is a perfect opportunity too, as they're both side by side on this heat. You can watch these guys. They're going to push each other, and they're going to lean into each other because they're to that skill level to where they can actually lean into each other. So we see Randy Curley getting his car pushed out there at the front, but will Bruce allow Randy to have that big of a gap? And I'll tell you no, and here's why. Because Bruce has the advantage on the creep, because Randy's not going to be able to mentally remember or physically. Well, Randy done a swap up there because he's been doing this a while. So what Randy's doing is keeping Bruce at a level to where that he can keep with him. Well, actually, I take that back. It looks like Bruce's car is just running perfectly right now. He's actually running off and leaving Randy. But under normal circumstances, if the cars were running relatively close together, what would take place is the person in the back has the advantage when it comes to the creeping on the come up, I guess you would say, to get a little ethnic here. But nonetheless, Bruce doesn't have anything to dictate his eyeballs off of to know how far to push it each and every time. He's just doing it off of habit, of how many times he's raced. So that can easily be manipulated by somebody right up on your coattails. And what ends up happening is he'll fall out of that rhythm and he'll just get a step off here or a step off there. And Randy can see that because he can keep one eye ahead of him and one eye on his car because he's judging that distance. So he knows, like, oh, he messed up there. He let off too soon. Or oh, he messed up there. He drove it just a little too deep. Now he's loose coming out of the corner. And he's able to capitalize on that, whether it's an entry problem or an exit problem on Dead Man's Corner, and vice versa for Bruce. They know where the line is when it comes to a feeling. They know where it's at, but actually being able to do it each and every time, they can't do it without some sort of thing to keep their mind focused on. So it's always best if you are running for that lead. If you are in the lead, you need to try your best to figure that out and stay out ahead. But if you're trying to play it safe and you got the lead, it's always best to stay behind the guy that's pushing you. That way that you can put him under the pressure and it's not you under the pressure. So we get another yellow flag called there. We see Cameron's car coming off. We did get a red flag call there, but we got 2 seconds left to go here. As they'll hit that button and go back. We still see Bruce and Randy there neck and neck. Bruce's car really flying. Like I said, I believe his ratios are set for the middle lanes, and it is really humming for sure. And of course, Randy's stuff is not going to fare well in the higher portions of these lanes, as his car is set for the lower sections, it seems, tonight. So we can take a quick look here, and we can see that this is proven out to be true. We see the 57 laps there turned on White Lane by Randy Kirtley, 56 on red. These are comparable to the average of everybody else, but not to be put to sleep here. But Glenn Burden there running an exceptional race tonight, too. I know we've been focusing mostly on Randy and Bruce as they've got somewhat of a rivalry going, but Glenn's wanting to dip his nose in on the action tonight, too. And we can compare all three of these guys here. They're within 3 laps of each other there on black. They're within just a lap or two of each other there on purple. All three of these guys are running relatively close, and that's why I say at the end of it all, not having a big difference when it comes to the gear ratios. Gabriel, I did tell Glenn I was going to try to have like a grand reveal for this tomorrow as our pinball uh, competition is going live tomorrow. Of course, my brother there, Gabriel Kirtley, all of us here, pinheads for sure. How's it going, Clay? All right, I'll get you set up, man. Clay Brown, ladies and gentlemen. What place did you end up finishing in the under 18 race last week? Third? Clay Brown, I'm telling you, he's nipping at the heels of Brennan. Every time they come in, they're neck and neck. It's the Brennan and Clay show, like it's the Randy and Bruce show tonight. But yeah, Gabriel, I did tell Glenn about it, and of course, you know his reaction was cowabunga. 40 seconds before we race. I'm going to get me a quick drink here as I've been just motor mouthing it this whole time. We see Tom there enjoying himself a drink. I'm going to enjoy myself one. Got me 36 of these golfers' friends. That's what I call them. Brisk iced tea lemon. If you ain't ever tried it, it's really good. Uh, Definitely will get your water intake up for sure if you're low on water. Hope I didn't mess something up. I just clicked something. Looks like we've got several people struggling right now on the race. Nobody actually out. Oh, that's right, because the race is over, ladies and gentlemen. It is about time that Tom joins the GRC there, Gabe. Uh, as this is actually, I need to let this run out. So we got a minute and 55 seconds. We can talk a little bit. I would love that Tom would join the GRC race. Tom, big fisherman. That is for sure. Let that run, please. We need to let it run so that I can get the laps because they've already ran their 8 heats. The first heat messed up, so we had to reset it. So 1 minute and 50 seconds, and we'll get the final tally. Yeah, Gabe, like I just said, we had a full speed come apart software wise on both the stream and the actual racing software. It did the runtime error again, as it does every once in a while. So the 8th heat, nobody's going to run it because they've already actually technically ran it. But once that comes in, we'll tally it up. Speaking of that, I'll go ahead and let you guys know the first heat was 50 laps by Tom Payton, 52 laps by Bruce Bullington. Cameron D got him 39. Glenn Burden got 55. Randy Kirtley got 49. And Nathaniel Burden got 47. And that was our first round heat. Of course, we'll tally this stuff up here in just a moment whenever the time runs out. But yeah, earlier today, Tom, he always says, I'm considering when it comes to GRC races. I'm considering. I said, well, man, it's time to consider. It's time to either get one or don't. And I walked out of the room, and I don't know what my wife said to him, but he said, hey, Donnie, I got one, man. And I said, man, I couldn't believe it that he finally got one. 'Cause of course, the majority of our racers run GRC, and I'm glad to see that he finally completed his full box now and done well tonight for his first time on GRC for sure. But I said, Tom, I got to call Gabe. So I called Gabe up and I said, man, hold on to something strong. I got to tell you something. And of course, Gabe always gives Tom a hard time, says he ain't got the skill to run GRC. So he said, all right, what's going on, man? He was worried it was something real serious. And I told him, I said, hey, man, Tom got him a GRC. And he goes, I'm dead. I've done passed on. So that cracked me up pretty good. So let's see, Bruce, let me write this all down here. We got Bruce with 416 laps plus 52. Randy 49 laps plus 412. So it's going to be close whether or not Randy can even hold off third position here.
What kind of crackers?
See, Glenn Burden
Doritos, peanut butter.
with 411.
Peanuts, cashews.
55 laps. And Nathaniel has gotten a plus 47 to his 386. We got Tommy T, newcomer, 383 plus, it's going to be close between them two, 50. So they're on the same lap. Did Nathaniel and Tom leave their? No, they didn't know they was on the same lap. Then they tied for third. Or fourth. They might have tied for fourth. Hang on, let me do Cameron's. 41 or 334 plus 39. 466 for Glenn. $461 for Randy. $468 for Bruce. $433 for Nathaniel. $433 for Tom Payton. $373 for Cameron. So your first place is Bruce. Your second place is Glenn Burden. Your third place is Randy. Your fourth place is tied between Tom and Nathaniel because neither one of them stickered their car. And fifth place is Cameron. So Alicia Gaddis says, LOL, I believe in Tom, and I mean that. Well, I'm sure he'll be glad to hear that as he's standing right here to the left of me, and he just laughed. So Tom does definitely appreciate that, Alicia.
Go Dogs.
So that's all we have currently. We might start up another one here in a minute if I can get this stuff working right. I think we're going to do a GRC race. If we do, I'll relabel it as a GRC race and we'll start it. or GTP. I'm sorry. Glenn had to correct me on that. But thank y'all for tuning in to our Thursday night GRC race, and I'll either see you again tonight or I won't. Gabriel says, Tom, get on camera. Tom, get over here. Get on camera. Let Gabriel see you. Right there. There's Gabriel in that little hole.
What do you want, Gabe? What do you want?
He says, what do you want, Gabe? Oh, I'm sure he's typing. Wow, Tom. Gabriel said, good job.
That's surprising.
It is, man. Gabriel usually gives you a hard time.
Yeah.
He expects, here's the thing, Gabriel expects more from Tom because Tom, he really does put forth an effort out here. And Gabe doesn't cut Tom no slack. Like Dad doesn't cut anybody slack out there. We don't cut slack. Gabriel don't cut slack. And then he comes in the natural fashion here for Tom. About time you get a GRC and get some skills.
I was just waiting till anyone hurt his feelings.
And you heard it here. Tom said he is just waiting because he didn't want to hurt feelings. All right. Well, I'll see you guys shortly, or I won't see you, as we're having some more issues here with the software. So we might be it, but we'll see. I'm going to restart the software, restart the computer, and get the orange track turned on. But this is Donovan Kirtley, and thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and send it all around to your fans, family, and loved ones and all that.